Rain poured down on downtown Seattle that Tuesday evening, turning the streets into rivers of gray. Caitlin Murphy stood outside the hospital, exhausted from her double shift, her 3-year-old daughter Mia clutching a worn teddy bear and fighting to keep her eyes open. Caitlin pulled out her phone with shaking hands. 6% battery, just enough to call an Uber home. She couldn't afford it, not really, but the bus would take an hour with transfers, and Mia was already asleep on her feet. She ordered the ride, watching her bank account drop to double digits. Tomorrow's problem. Tonight, she just needed to get her baby home. A sleek black SUV pulled up to the curb. Caitlin glanced at her phone. The license plate matched. She didn't notice that the app showed her driver was still 5 minutes away. She opened the back door, the interior glowing with soft amber lighting, and helped Mia climb into the luxurious leather seat. "Thank you so much," Caitlin said, buckling Mia in before sliding into the front passenger seat with her weathered backpack. "I know it's not far, just to Riverside Apartments on 5th. The man in the driver's seat turned to look at her, surprise clear on his face. He was maybe 35, dark hair, strong features, wearing an expensive charcoal suit that probably cost more than Caitlin made in a month. "I think there's been a mistake," he started to say. "I know the rating system is tough," Caitlin interrupted, misunderstanding. "But I promise I'll give you 5 stars. You have no idea how much I appreciate this. It's been the longest day, and Mia's exhausted, and I just need to get her home and—" Her voice cracked. "Sorry, I'm rambling. Long day." The man studied her face. Caitlin knew what he saw. A woman in her late 20s wearing scrubs that had seen better days, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, eyes red from exhaustion and unshed tears. And in the back, a little girl with light brown hair already falling asleep, clutching a teddy bear missing one eye. Something shifted in his expression. Instead of correcting her, he said simply, "Riverside Apartments on 5th, got it." He pulled into traffic smoothly. The car was warm, comfortable, so different from Caitlin's ancient sedan that had finally died last week, leaving her dependent on public transportation and the occasional Uber she couldn't afford. "Mommy, I'm hungry," Mia mumbled from the back seat. "I know, baby. We'll have dinner when we get home." Caitlin didn't mention that dinner would be the last of the macaroni and cheese from a box because payday wasn't until Friday and her account was nearly empty. The man glanced at her. "Rough day? Is it that obvious?" Caitlin tried to laugh, but it came out more like a sob. "Sorry. You probably don't want to hear about your passengers' problems." "I don't mind," he said. There was something in his voice, a gentleness that made Caitlin's exhaustion crack her usual defenses. "My daughter had a fever last week, had to take her to the ER. Do you know what an ER visit costs without insurance? The bill came today, and my car died, and my landlord raised the rent, and I'm working 2 jobs, but it's never enough." She wiped at her eyes angrily. "Sorry, you definitely didn't sign up for this. I'm just tired." "Don't apologize," the man said quietly. "You're doing an incredible job. Anyone can see that." Caitlin looked at him in surprise. Most people, when they heard about her struggles, offered platitudes or judgment. This stranger offered understanding. "What's your name?" she asked. He hesitated for just a moment. "James." "I'm Caitlin, and that's Mia in the back, already asleep, I think." "She's beautiful," James said, glancing in the rearview mirror. "How old?" 3, and the light of my life, even on days like today when everything feels impossible. They drove in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then James asked, "What do you do?" "I'm a medical assistant at the hospital, and I clean offices at night after Mia goes to bed. My neighbor watches her. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. Mostly. That's 2 jobs." "When do you sleep?" "When I can," Caitlin admitted. "It's not forever. I'm taking online classes. One day I'll be a nurse practitioner. I'll make enough that Mia and I will be okay. I just have to keep going." "You're remarkable," James said, and he sounded like he meant it. Caitlin felt tears sting her eyes again. "I'm just doing what I have to do. Any mother would do the same." "Not everyone would do it with such grace," James replied. They arrived at Riverside Apartments, a building that had seen better decades. Caitlin gathered her things, preparing to wake Mia. "Wait," James said. He pulled out his wallet and handed Caitlin several bills. "For your daughter, for dinner, please." Caitlin stared at the money. "At least $200. I can't accept this. The ride was only $12. This is too much." "Then consider it a tip," James said, "for an inspiring conversation. For reminding me what courage looks like. Please, take it." Caitlin looked at this stranger who'd listened without judgment, who'd offered kindness without condescension. She thought about the empty refrigerator upstairs, about the medical bills, about Mia's outgrown shoes. "Thank you," she whispered, taking the money with trembling hands. "Thank you so much. You have no idea what this means." "I think I do," James said softly. "Take care of yourself, Caitlin. And Mia. You both deserve good things." Caitlin carried her sleeping daughter inside, and James watched until they were safely in the building. Then he pulled out his phone and called his actual destination. "I'm going to be late," he said. Something important came up. What Caitlin didn't know was that James wasn't an Uber driver. He was James Rothwell, CEO of Rothwell Medical Solutions, the company that owned the hospital where she worked. He'd been on his way to a board meeting when this exhausted mother had mistaken his car for her ride. He also didn't tell her that starting tomorrow, he'd be implementing changes at the hospital. Better wages for support staff, subsidized childcare, health insurance for part-time workers, education assistance for employees pursuing advanced degrees. Because meeting Caitlin had reminded him why he'd gotten into healthcare in the first place. Not for profits and board meetings, but for people like her. People working themselves to exhaustion to care for others, barely keeping their own heads above water. 3 weeks later, Caitlin was called into the hospital administrator's office. She went with dread, certain she was being let go. Instead, she found herself facing HR with incredible news. Her wage was being increased by 40%. She was being offered full health insurance. There was a new on-site childcare facility subsidized for employees. And there was an education grant program she was eligible for, covering her tuition for her nurse practitioner program. "I don't understand," Caitlin said, tears streaming down her face. "Why? Why now?" "New CEO," the HR director explained. "James Rothwell. He took over a month ago and immediately started restructuring how we treat our staff. Said something about recognizing the people who make healthcare possible." Caitlin felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. James, CEO, the man who'd driven her home, who'd listened to her struggles, who'd given her money for groceries. He'd known who she was, where she worked, and he'd chosen not to tell her. She asked to meet with him, was granted a 15-minute appointment 2 days later. When she walked into his office, James stood from behind his desk, looking nervous for the first time since she'd known him. "You knew," Caitlin said, "that night. You knew I worked for your company." "I did," James admitted. "I'd been reviewing employee files earlier that day. Yours stood out. Single mother, working 2 jobs, pursuing education. When you got into my car by mistake, I recognized you from your photo. Why didn't you tell me?" James walked around his desk, standing a respectful distance away. "Because you were already exhausted and overwhelmed. Because you thought I was someone safe to talk to. Because I wanted to hear the truth about what it's like for the people who keep this hospital running. And because," he paused, "because I was tired of people talking to James Rothwell, CEO. I wanted to be just James for a little while." "The changes you've made," Caitlin said. "The wage increase, the benefits, the child care. That's because of what I told you?" That's because I've been doing this job wrong, James replied. I've been so focused on profit margins and efficiency that I forgot about the humans behind the numbers. You reminded me. You and everyone like you, working impossible hours for insufficient pay, sacrificing everything for your families and your patients. Caitlin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I poured my heart out to my boss without knowing it. That's mortifying. Don't be embarrassed, James said gently. Be proud. You advocated for yourself and everyone like you. You just didn't know you were doing it. The money you gave me that night, Caitlin said. I used it for groceries and to pay part of Mia's medical bill. I've wanted to pay you back. It was a gift, James said firmly. Not a loan. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Caitlin asked, Why are you really doing all this? The truth. James's expression grew distant, tinged with old pain. My mother was a single parent. Medical assistant just like you. Worked herself to exhaustion trying to give me opportunities. She died when I was 15. Heart attack brought on by stress and untreated high blood pressure because she couldn't afford to take time off to see a doctor. I built this company in her memory. But somewhere along the way, I forgot what she taught me about the dignity of every person, the value of every worker. He met Caitlin's eyes. You reminded me, you and Mia, getting into the wrong car on a rainy night, trusting a stranger to get you home safely. You deserve better than exhaustion and struggle. Everyone does. Caitlin felt tears streaming down her face. I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept the changes, James replied. Say you'll take advantage of the education program and the childcare and the benefits. Say you'll keep being the amazing mother and healthcare worker you already are, just with slightly less stress. Yes, Caitlin whispered. Yes to all of it. And thank you for listening, for caring, for making a difference. 6 months later, Caitlin stood at the opening of the new employee childcare center, Mia running around with other children, laughing and playing. James had insisted Caitlin be on the planning committee, valued her input as someone who understood what working parents needed. She looks happy, James observed, watching Mia show another child her teddy bear. Now repaired with both eyes present. She is, Caitlin said. We both are. I can't believe how much has changed since that night. Since I got into the wrong car? The right car, James corrected gently. At exactly the right time. Caitlin looked at him. Over the months, they'd worked together on various employee initiatives. She'd gotten to know the man behind the title. Someone thoughtful and kind who asked questions and actually listened to the answers. Someone who remembered his mother's struggles and used his power to ease others' burdens. Can I tell you something? Caitlin asked. That night, when you gave me money and listened to my problems, I cried myself to sleep. Not just because of the kindness, but because I'd spent so long feeling invisible. Like I didn't matter. Like I was just a number in a system that didn't care if I drowned. You made me feel seen. You were never invisible, James said. You were just surrounded by people not paying attention. I'm trying to change that. You're doing more than trying, Caitlin replied. You're succeeding. Do you know how many people have thanked me for talking to you that night? They know I'm the reason for the changes. They say I advocated for all of us. You did, James said. By being honest about your struggles. By trusting a stranger with your truth. That took courage. As the opening ceremony continued, James and Caitlin stood together, watching the children play. Two people who'd met by accident, changed each other's lives, and discovered that sometimes the wrong car takes you exactly where you need to go. And Mia, playing with her friends in a safe, nurturing environment while her mother worked toward a better future, was living proof that small acts of kindness create ripples that extend far beyond one rainy night. If this story resonated with you, please like and share it with someone who believes in second chances and unexpected blessings. Subscribe for more stories about kindness, dignity, and finding hope in unlikely places. Comment below about a time when a mistake led to something wonderful, or when someone's compassion changed your circumstances. Your story could give someone else the courage to keep going, to accept help, to believe that better days are possible.